World War II didn't just appear out of nowhere, it was like a storm brewing over many years. To understand how it started, we need to look at what happened after World War I. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, left Germany feeling humiliated and angry. They lost land, had to pay huge reparations, and their economy was struggling. This resentment built up over the years, leaving people desperate for change. Meanwhile, the 1930s were tough all around. The Great Depression made life hard for millions, and countries around the world were feeling the pressure. This gave rise to strong, charismatic leaders in places like Germany, Italy, and Japan. Leaders who promised to make their countries great again, no matter what. But these promises would soon lead the world into the most destructive conflict it had ever seen. How exactly did things spiral out of control? Let's find out. Chapter 1. Roots of the conflict. The roots of World War II run deep, and it all started with Germany's frustration after World War I. The Treaty of Versailles punished Germany heavily, taking their land, draining their economy, and limiting their military. This wasn't just a piece of paper, it was a deep wound that hurt German pride. Many Germans felt humiliated, and they were ready to support anyone who promised to restore their nation's power. Around the same time, Italy and Japan were feeling their own frustrations. Italy, even though it was on the winning side in World War I, didn't get the rewards it expected, leading to anger and disappointment. Japan, on the other hand, had ambitions in Asia but felt ignored by Western powers. All of this created the perfect environment for leaders like Mussolini, Hitler, and the Japanese military to step in. These leaders promised strength, unity, and a return to greatness, something people desperately wanted to hear. The economic crisis of the 1930s, known as the Great Depression, only made things worse. Jobs disappeared, money was scarce, and people across the world were struggling to survive. In Germany, Italy, and Japan, people turned to leaders who promised a way out of this chaos, and those leaders saw an opportunity to push their countries towards expansion and power. These ambitions would eventually light the fuse that started World War II. Chapter 2. Alliances and Expansion. The next big step towards World War II was the formation of the Axis powers and their early moves to expand their territories. By the late 1930s, Germany, Italy, and Japan had all become aggressive nations looking to grow their influence and territory. These three countries formed a partnership known as the Axis Alliance, with each country seeking dominance in different parts of the world. Germany, led by Adolf Hitler, began by breaking the rules set by the Treaty of Versailles. Hitler rebuilt the German military, reoccupied the Rhineland, and started expanding territory by annexing Austria in 1938. He claimed he was just uniting all German-speaking people, but in reality, he was testing how far he could push without other nations stopping him. Italy, under Benito Mussolini, also had its eyes on expansion. Mussolini wanted to create a new Roman Empire, and he started by invading Ethiopia in 1935. Despite objections from other countries, Italy faced little serious opposition, which only encouraged more aggressive actions. Japan, meanwhile, was focused on expanding in Asia. They invaded China in 1937, aiming to take control of its resources and land. Japan's military government believed they needed these resources to become a major power, and didn't hesitate to use force to get them. All of these early acts of aggression showed that the Axis powers were willing to use military force to achieve their goals, and the rest of the world was hesitant to act decisively against them. The lack of strong response from major powers like Britain and France only made Germany, Italy, and Japan bolder in their ambitions, setting the stage for an even larger conflict. Chapter 3. Breaking Point. Start of World War II. The breaking point came in 1939. Germany, under Hitler, turned its attention to Poland. Hitler demanded territory from Poland, particularly the city of Danzig and the Polish corridor, which separated parts of Germany. On September 1, 1939, German troops invaded Poland using a strategy called blitzkrieg, or lightning war. This was a fast, brutal assault that involved planes, tanks, and infantry working together to overwhelm the enemy quickly. Britain and France had finally had enough. They had tried appeasement, giving in to Hitler's demands in the hope of avoiding another large-scale war, but it was clear that nothing was going to stop his ambitions. So, on September 3, 1939, Britain and France declared war on Germany, officially starting World War II. The invasion of Poland was swift, and within weeks, Poland was defeated. This wasn't just Germany's doing. Soviet forces also invaded from the east as part of a secret deal between Hitler and Stalin. This agreement, called the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, split Poland between Germany and the Soviet Union, showing that Hitler wasn't just interested in expansion westward, but was willing to make deals with unlikely partners to get what he wanted. After Poland fell, a period known as the Phony War began. For months, there was very little actual fighting in Western Europe. It was a time when everyone knew conflict was coming, but no one wanted to make the first move. The world held its breath, and the calm before the storm continued until the spring of 1940, when Germany began its major offensives in Western Europe, finally shattering the uneasy peace. Chapter 4. Early phase, Blitzkrieg in Europe. After invading Poland, Germany turned to Western Europe. In April 1940, Hitler attacked Denmark and Norway, quickly overrunning them for key ports and Atlantic access. In May 1940, Germany launched Blitzkrieg on Belgium, the Netherlands and France. Using tanks, aircraft and ground forces, they bypassed Allied defences like the Maginot Line, sweeping into northern France and outmanoeuvring the French and British armies. The rapid advance led to the evacuation of over 300,000 British and French troops from Dunkirk, known as the Miracle of Dunkirk, involving many civilian boats. Though it saved troops, it was still a major Allied defeat. By June 1940, France had fallen. Germany occupied much of the country, and a puppet government was set up in the south. Hitler expected Britain to surrender, but Britain chose to fight on. Germany's swift victories demonstrated the power of Blitzkrieg, leaving Britain alone against the Nazi threat. The fall of France was a clear turning point, and the fight for Europe continued. Chapter 5. Britain alone. The Battle of Britain. With France defeated, Germany turned to Britain. Hitler expected Britain to surrender, but Winston Churchill rallied the British, declaring they would never surrender. This led to the Battle of Britain, a crucial air campaign. In summer 1940, the German Luftwaffe began bombing raids to destroy the Royal Air Force, RAF, and break British morale. German bombers targeted airfields, military sites and cities, including London, in what became known as the Blitz. The RAF, though outnumbered, fiercely resisted. Using radar, they intercepted many attacks. British pilots, called the Few by Churchill, showed great bravery, and civilians kept morale high despite the danger. By October 1940, Germany's plan for air superiority had failed. The RAF held firm, and the Luftwaffe suffered heavy losses, forcing Hitler to postpone the invasion of Britain. It was Germany's first major setback, showing that Hitler's forces could be stopped. Chapter 6. Global Conflict and Turning Points. As the war spread, the world saw some critical turning points. In June 1941, Hitler made a huge gamble by launching Operation Barbarossa, invading the Soviet Union. The harsh Russian winter and fierce Soviet resistance slowed the German advance, making it a costly mistake for Hitler. Meanwhile, on December 7, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, bringing the United States into the war. This event shifted the balance as the US provided massive industrial and military power to the Allies. In 1942, the tide began to turn. The Soviets stopped the German advance at Stalingrad, a major defeat for the Nazis. In the Pacific, the US defeated Japan at the Battle of Midway, weakening Japan's naval strength. These events marked the beginning of the Axis decline. The Allies started to push back on all fronts, and the hope for victory was finally within sight. Chapter 7: Turning Tides. The turning point of the war became clear by 1943. In Europe, the Soviets had pushed the Germans back after the victory at Stalingrad. The Red Army was now on the offensive, driving the Nazis out of Soviet territory. In North Africa, the British and American forces defeated the German Afrika Korps, leading to the Axis retreat. This success allowed the Allies to invade Italy in 1943, leading to Mussolini's downfall. In the Pacific, the US launched successful island-hopping campaigns, recapturing territory from Japan. The battles at Guadalcanal and later in the Philippines showed that the Allies were gaining strength. The Axis powers were now on the defensive, losing ground on all fronts. The momentum had clearly shifted, and the Allies were pressing forward towards victory. By 1944, the Allies were pushing on all fronts. In Europe, D-Day marked a major step forward as Allied troops landed in Normandy, France, on June 6, 1944. This opened a new front, leading to the liberation of France and pushing German forces back. On the Eastern Front, the Soviet Union continued to advance, liberating much of Eastern Europe. The Germans were now in full retreat, fighting a losing battle on multiple sides. In the Pacific, the Allies gained momentum with victories in the Philippines, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa, setting the stage for a direct invasion of Japan. Faced with relentless pressure, Germany surrendered on May 8, 1945, marking VE Day. To bring the war to a close in Asia, the US dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945, forcing Japan's surrender. World War II officially ended on September 2, 1945. The world was finally at peace, but the cost had been immense. Millions had perished, cities lay in ruins, and a new global order emerged from the ashes, setting the stage for the Cold War. But that's a story for another episode.